took my dog on a walk today, and during that walk, I discovered something about myself that I hadn't really put a lot of thought into and really been able to put into words. Recently, I've been thinking a little bit more about happiness and when did it switch, right? I feel like we were all, and hopefully everybody had a decent childhood, but as kids, we saw the world differently than how we see the world now as adults. And I was just kind of thinking in my head, when did that switch? And, the whole reason I was even having this thought, where I'm at right now, it's like a beautiful, 70-degree sunny day. The sun's just warm enough and the breeze is just cool enough to be like that perfect temp where you're not too hot or not too cold. And, I just remember the days of going outside during recess or just being home from school and playing outside all day on those days and feeling just this immense happiness. And that got me thinking. I was like, well, is there a way that I can get back to that place in my head? And I just want to share my thoughts and see if anybody may agree with me on these. And, maybe I'll be able to kind of share what I'm going to try to do differently in my life to maybe allow for more happiness, but ultimately just think more like I used to when I was a kid. And so really to answer the question I brought up first was like, when did it all stop? I think it really all stopped once I got responsibilities. I didn't have any real responsibilities when I was younger. And I would say when I first started getting responsibilities was when I was in college. And by responsibilities, I mean ultimately just things you're responsible for, right? Like it's kind of in the word, or it's kind of in the name. But, paying bills, doing this, doing that. Like in college, I didn't really have a ton of bills. Like I was lucky enough. My parents paid for my college. I lived on campus. And so I did have a job. So I had a little bit of income. And then of course, I got schoolwork. Got to get your schoolwork done. So I always had either papers, homework, tests to study for. But I never felt like a responsibility as much as like nowadays. So like nowadays I'm married, have a dog, which, he's not too crazy. Gotta have a mortgage, credit cards, insurance, phone bill, internet, all this stuff that weighs on you a little bit. And I think once I graduated college is when everything kind of changed. And so just a little bit about me. I ended up graduating college and then living with two buddies of mine in an apartment. And even that point in my life, I felt like I was still in college mode because I had a little bit saved up just through working all the way through college. And so I wasn't desperate for money. And so I didn't have a job for a little bit either. And so I was just kind of chilling. My buddies would go to work and I was unemployed for a little bit, but was fine with it and had a great time being unemployed. And then, they would come home, we would chill and hang out, and it was great. I'd see them every single day, and it was fantastic. But, responsibilities started adding up. I started having to pay rent, having to pay my portion of all the utilities, had to get insurance. I started fully paying for my car. I still had my old car at that time, so I hadn't purchased my new car yet. And so there wasn't that expense, but everything started to become more expensive. And from not having a job, I started to see my bank account dwindling. And that right there, I think, from what I have thought about, was probably the last time that I felt maybe like a kid, because now responsibilities started adding up. And they started to weigh on me a little bit, it wasn't like I was super worried, but I was like, okay, I have to pay rent. I have to do this. I have to do that, and so I have to get a job. And I think that was the last time. And, I'd be curious what other people think, but I hadn't really sat down and been like, yes, like once I gained all these responsibilities, my life has gotten worse, because in theory, that's not necessarily the case. But there's more things to think about. Having a full-time job, that weighs on you a lot, especially in corporate America. And then having all these expenses that I just talked about. And so as a kid, and I guess it's depending on everybody's childhood. We just don't worry about those things. And I think it's just because we don't know about them. I had no clue about money as a kid. I had no clue what money bought, how much money people made, anything about overall economics of life, of the world. And honestly, ignorance was bliss. If you think about it, like not knowing that kind of stuff is actually kind of cool. But as an adult, you grow up and you have to know some of that stuff, at least to a certain degree. And once I had to know all those things, it was kind of like a turning point where I was like, I can't go back to being a kid again and not knowing these things, because you start trying to understand the world, how being an adult works. If you've heard that term, like adulting is not a lot of fun at first, and it really doesn't get a lot better. But at first it kind of sucks, and then it gets probably progressively worse. And I narrow it down ultimately to just having these responsibilities and having a job. It also is very dependent on your job, if you like it, how stressful it is. But not to dwell on that too much, I want to get into what I'm trying to do differently, to try and view the world as if I was more of a kid again. And I don't think I'm going to be able to do that 100%. But what I want to try to do in my life right now is really live in the moment more and look at the world from a point of view as I did when I was a kid. And how I did that as a kid is I kind of saw everything as an opportunity to play. And now I view the world more as like an opportunity to potentially make money. And I made a video about money and how, it's not the root to any sort of health or happiness per se. But I think if we view the world in a more playful, like explorative way, then I think we'll kind of unlock that way of thinking that we had as a kid. And so just like taking that walk today with my dog, just an absolute beautiful day, got me really appreciative of what I do have instead of what I don't have. And I think as a kid, there were things I wanted as a kid and things I didn't get right away. But as adults, I think now we have money and we see other adults making more money and having other things that we don't have. I think we view those as things that we want. And as kids, we also kind of do that, but on a smaller scale. And I think it's just a little bit different because as kids, we never had the opportunity to buy those things. And so if our buddy or our friend had something we wanted, we would just go over to his house and play with whatever that was, like a toy or something. I'm getting a little off topic, but it's really a whole viewpoint on life. And I think it's a combination of being more appreciative every single day for the things you have, seeing the world in a playful manner. Like I would so badly want to like not have this job, have a job, or not have to have a job, right? And then just like spend my day doing whatever I wanted to do, because that's kind of what we did as kids. Ultimately, is just spend our day doing whatever we wanted to do for the most part, and we would always look to play and have fun. And I think we can do that in our own life, and that's what I want to do more of, is look to have fun, not taking things too seriously. Anything I go to do in my life, I'm not probably going to be able to do it professionally, like make money. Like, yeah, I would love to grow this YouTube video to the point of where I would make some money, but if not, that's okay too. I love just sharing my thoughts and having fun with this. And that's why this is the main reason I made this YouTube video, is just to have fun and just enjoy my time. And so just to kind of wrap things up, I want to try and do better in thinking more like a kid would, thinking more how I used to think, embrace, I guess, my inner child is a good term to use. And I think that'll help me in my everyday life just appreciate things more, but also not take things as seriously, and hopefully not have the weighing down of my responsibilities as much. So let me know what you guys think in the comments if you made it this far. I appreciate it. More videos to come. I have so many more topics to cover. But anyway, that'll wrap it up. I'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks.